they picked that current area, and why do you think all of those, or Transylvania influenced all of those myths? I don't know how to say this.
Well, when I did my research on Stoker, at the time, in that 18th century time period, almost all of the vampire stories and ideas were coming out of that area, Eastern Europe. And then also, Stoker had a friend who was from Hungary, who was an author and a traveler, Armin something or other, I don't remember his last name. But when they met up, Armin would always tell Stoker these stories and these legends of the Carpathian Mountains and Transylvania, and I guess those stories sparked that interest. Stoker went east and learned about this folklore. And probably just the time period determined where the setting would be.
Yeah, I suppose, and I guess because Transylvania pretty much makes the perfect setting for the story, because it's supposed to be a mysterious place. In Transylvania, basically, one of these things that I looked up, it said, it's a very dark, or it's one of the most spectacular views in all of Europe, because you see the Alps that are covered in snow, and you can see them come out through the dense mist, and then you see these medieval villages and the castles, and it's like, I don't know, it just creates kind of an eerie feeling, and it makes perfect sense for this kind of story to be in it, because it's like a mythical place, or a magical place with a magical monster, I guess, or being, I don't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, I feel like this isn't like a discussion, it's more like me just talking. But anyways, whatever, it's fine. So the next and final part of this, I talked about how Stoker, like, how he grew up and what he wrote. It's like, he wrote 18 other novels besides Dracula, but I've never heard of another novel by Stoker. He's only known for Dracula. It's like, some of these websites lied to me too. It said, Bram Stoker lived in Transylvania, or that he lives in Transylvania. He didn't live in Transylvania.
He was Irish.
Yeah. It's like, now I put that in my paper, and I'm like, shit. Oh, crap. Yeah. But, whatever. But, why do you think that Stoker, how do you think that Stoker came up with this one idea that was such a hit that people knew him so well for it, but then he could never come up with anything else of that magnitude that was that great?
Like, why was Dracula so successful?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's the whole aspect of, that horror story. People that probably appealed to the mid-18th century people. Because nowadays we're kind of desensitized to that stuff. Like, scary movies aren't really scary anymore.
Yeah, no, like, there's nothing really scares us. Pretty much seen a lot.
200 years ago, Dracula was probably, like, horrifying to read.
Yeah.
That was probably a huge drawing of what drew a ton of people to it. Was probably that. It was unique in that regard at the time. And then also, it relates, it kind of adds in those, at the time, current events. The idea of these women's rights movements, these more independent women going against the classic male-dominated society, the religion and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's more meaning to the story other than just what's on the surface, which is a scary vampire story.
I suppose, and it's like, it's a really good story compared to his other one. Well, I've obviously never read any of his other stories, but it's like obviously this one's so well known, but it's like I don't understand why, if this one was such a success, why he wouldn't have been able to write another one that was that great.
Yeah, I don't know.
He could have been like Stephen King, like just writing all these horror books, but no, he just wrote one. It's like I don't get it. If it was that successful, well, I don't know how successful it was back then actually. All I know is now we think about it like in all.
A lot of these classic novels, they're not popular at all. Like right when they come out.
Yeah.
And then they get popular like later on or after the author dies or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was the case, but it could have been.
Yeah, because it's like I'm trying to remember who it was, but there's one person who I think maybe it was like To Kill a Mockingbird or something. When it first came out, people were so against it, like everybody hated it. But now we think of it as like we read it in like every English class. We always have to read it, and it's like it's known as one of the maybe not one of the best novels of all time, but it's like a classic novel that everybody reads now. And it's like I don't really understand, why do you think that people change their opinions as time goes on for those novels?
Probably, at the time, these independent women, the idea of that was not popular at all. And this novel kind of reinforced the women idea. And then maybe as time went on, and, women, they gained more rights, gained more privileges, people were okay with that. When they went back and looked at the novel again, they realized, this is socially acceptable. We don't have to, taboo in this book anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. That would make sense. Okay, well, I think that's pretty much done with that portion of it. So, next, or the other thing that I did was, obviously, I watched the 3 movies. I watched Son of Frankenstein, which was, even though it was the oldest one, it was from 1939, it was the best one out of the movies that I watched, because the rest were just crap. So Netflix doesn't have great movies, but it's like, I watched Son of Frankenstein, a movie that was called Frankenstein, and it took place in modern day time, and apparently Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster lived 200 years into the future, apparently, and they were like genetically mutating themselves so they could keep living forever and stuff. And it was the weirdest thing ever. It had nothing retaining to Frankenstein whatsoever. I was actually disappointed that I watched it, because the first one was actually like interesting. Even though it was an old movie, I don't usually like movies that were before the 90s, but it's like it's from 1939. It was interesting.
Yeah, for a movie.
What?
That's a weird idea for a movie, especially in 1939.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely in the future.
Oh, no. The future one came out in 2004.
Oh, just kidding.
Okay, what movies did you watch about, or did you watch them about Frankenstein and Dracula?
I watched the 1994 Frankenstein, the 1992 Dracula, and then I watched the Simpsons Dracula episode, Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah, it's a good episode.
It is.
Yeah. See, once you told me that you watched that, I was like, oh, why didn't I watch that? It would have been so much easier. Like, it wouldn't have taken up as much time. It's like 30 minutes. Okay, what did you compare with those? Did you compare it to the novel, or did you compare it in itself?
Well, the Frankenstein film, I obviously compared to the novel.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, the Simpsons episode is something in itself because the Simpsons doesn't affect me that much.
Yeah.
The only similarities really were Dracula, played by Mr. Burns, and the fact that they went to Dracula's castle in the middle of the night, but his castle wasn't in Transylvania, it was in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And then other than, the fact that they could turn into bats, but other than that, there was...
Yeah. Let's see, well, the first film, Son of Frankenstein, we kind of talked about it, we talked about it in your discussion, but it was like, why, okay, in Son of Frankenstein, when they made it, he couldn't talk or anything, all he could do was grunt. Like, he saw himself in the mirror one time, and he kept looking at his creator and just grunting at him, like, it was just weird. Like, it happened for at least 5 minutes. I didn't really know how to fathom it. It was pretty boring. It's like, I don't know, why do you think, we already went over this, but why do you think, it changed so much? Because in her book, he could actually, he could talk and he could think and everything, and in this, all he could do, he could grunt. He seemed like the biggest idiot ever.
I guess when people think of, creation, abomination, monster, they're gonna think of something that is not very close to humans. I think, we as a species, we put ourselves so much higher up than other things, and I think that people would have a hard time dealing with the fact that this monster is really not that different than us. I think maybe the disconnect happened to maybe make it easier on the audiences to be able to explain it to them, for them to focus on the story, not have to worry about these little details, maybe.
Yeah.
And also, it's a bigger contrast. If you have this scientist over here and this horrible monster getting to talk over here, there's going to be more room for differing actions, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose it